Captain Elias Ward and Dr. Clara Voss stand before the island's pulsing heart, where an ancient watcher hungers on their fear. As the crystal chamber fractures, time fractures, and their desperate name shatters its hold, reality itself screams. Dare you uncover the terror within? Nothing is safe. Captain Elias Ward. A hardened ex-naval officer haunted by the sea's silence. He follows no orders but his own, until a mysterious island awakens something buried deep in him. Elias is a man of instinct and scars, fighting a past he won't speak of and a present that's quickly unraveling. Dr. Clara Voss. A brilliant geologist driven by obsession, Clara has spent years chasing myths beneath stone. Logical, fearless, and cold to most, she hides a trauma that only the island seems to recognize. With each tremor in the earth, her grip on science, and sanity, begins to slip. Captain Elias Ward stared into the gathering dusk as the meridian cut through gray swells, bound for a speck of land lost to every chart but Clara Voss's journals. Dr. Voss, pale in lantern light, traced her finger along scalloped ink lines, her breath catching at every note of anomalous readings and magnetic vortices. Elias gripped the wheel, recalling how rumors of miraculous herbs had lured them from Alma's safety into this forgotten stretch of sea. 12 men, prone to superstition, whispered of ghost ships and drowned souls. Clara, clutching a battered compass, laughed off their fears, until the needle spun wildly, revolved faster than any whirlpool could justify. A low moan rose from below decks, and the wind stilled. Above, a shape emerged, jagged black rock crowned by rotted timbers, like the ribcage of some ancient leviathan. The meridian shuddered as waves slammed her flank. Clara's lantern shattered against the rail, scattering glass and flame. Elias shouted orders, but the crew froze, eyes wide, limbs locked in dread. In the half-light he saw Clara step forward, curiosity and terror warring in her gaze. Then a spine-chilling crack echoed as wood splintered, and darkness swallowed them both. When Clara awoke, she lay face down on wet planks, salt stinging her eyes. The sky above was a blood-red haze, the wreck of the meridian groaned beside her, torn in two like a broken promise. Elias lay unconscious a few feet away, bleeding from a gash across his temple. Around them, half a dozen frightened sailors clung to floating debris, murmuring fragments of prayer and lament. Clara crawled through splintered planks to Elias, heart hammering as she heard a distant, tremulous song, something ancient and wordless, rising from the dark sea. "Elias," she whispered, shaking him. He groaned and opened one eye to find her face drained of color. He managed a rasp, "Where?" but the answer lay in the heavy fog rolling ashore. They drifted together toward land, adrift on a battered longboat. Every splash against the hull sent shocks through Clara's bones. Behind them, the phantom rig, the broken foremast of their ship, loomed like a skeletal sentinel. The sailors dared not speak of the lullaby on the wind. Elias strapped Clara to the oars and they rowed toward the island, a promise of refuge that felt more like a trap. The shore waited, silent and watching. Heatless sunlight revealed a narrow beach strewn with wreckage, crates of glass vials, torn canvas, splintered chests. Clara scrambled ashore, scanning for water, but found only footprints etched in chalky sand, too neat, too deliberate. Elias joined her, wounded but unbowed, carrying one of the vials. He squinted at its label, hemlock extract. They had lost their precious botanical samples, yet gained something worse. Inland rose ragged cliffs crowned by ruins of a stone tower, its narrow windows like blind eyes. From within, came a low susurrus, endless, urgent, as though the walls themselves whispered. "Do you hear it?" Elias asked, voice trembling. Clara pressed her palm to the tower's base, beneath her fingers, the stones pulsed as if alive. A distant cry echoed, half woman, half wind. One of the sailors screamed and ran, only to vanish among gorse and shadow. Night fell in an instant, bringing with it the mournful humming from the tower. Clara and Elias lit torches, resolved to find fresh water, and answers to the whispers that beckoned them deeper into the island's heart. At dawn, they discovered a courtyard ringed by a massive sundial etched with symbols neither recognized. Clara knelt to copy the carvings, fascinated despite the gnawing dread. Elias scouted the perimeter, spotting goat-sized rodents with glazed eyes scavenging among bones half buried in moss. He fired a shot, they fled into dark fissures beneath the stones. Clara studied the sundial's gnomon and realized it cast no shadow, time here was unbound. These markings, she murmured, they matched the runes in my journal, warnings of time-torn realms. Elias frowned, uneasy at the thought. Suddenly the ground tremored, dust spalling from the temple walls. From the fractured altar, a lantern ignited itself, spilling sickly green light. Within that glow Clara saw shapes moving just beyond sight, human figures kneeling, arms raised in silent prayer to something unseen. A single word ricocheted through her skull, return. Elias grabbed her arm, forcing them to retreat. As they fled, he heard the chant of those lost crew echoing behind them, return. Return, but the beach awaited, and beyond it, the unknowable sea. By midday, their search led them to a hidden grotto, its entrance half submerged. Clara's lamp revealed vaulted walls dripping with phosphorescent algae and handprints. Fresh. Squaring her shoulders, she followed the dripping marks deeper as Elias kept watch at the mouth. Each drip sounded like a heartbeat in the hush. They stumbled upon an underground pool so clear it mirrored the cracked ceiling. In its depths lay a rusted long-case clock, its hands spinning madly backward. Clara leaned in, transfixed by the reflection of two faces, hers and Elias's, distorted by ripples that whispered secrets she couldn't name. Footsteps sloshed behind them, Elias drew his pistol, voice low, Clara. She spun, nearly slipping on wet stone, and saw only her own reflection in the black water. A soft laugh rippled across the pool, though no wind stirred. The laughter grew into a chorus, voices of the drowned sailors, their words an indecipherable litany. Clara realized, with a horror that froze her blood, that the grotto itself was alive, and endlessly hungry for wanderers. They burst from the grotto as cold spray washed over them, the pool's black surface humming like a wounded beast. Clara's lamp flickered, Elias shielded her as tendrils of mist curled around their ankles, whispering, stay, in voices both familiar and wrong. Behind them, the tunnel mouth sealed itself in shadow, stones grinding like jaws. Clara stumbled, chest tightening, convinced the dripping stones had grown teeth. Elias hauled her upright, his face pale but resolute. They sprinted up the rocky incline, breath ragged, until the island's wind-swept plateau yawned ahead, an open arena free of the grotto's hungering walls. Yet the moment their boots touched soil, the ground rippled, and the air grew impossible heavy, as though the grotto's reach extended beyond its mouth. Clara pressed a hand to her throat, tasting iron and fear. Elias, gripping the vial of hemlock extract, realized the island itself might be distilling terror into their veins. Though shaken, they resolved to push on toward the tower ruins, they had no choice but forward. Night found them among twisted pines whose bent trunks arched like pleading arms. Their lanterns cast phantoms that danced along bristling needles. Every footstep cracked with unnatural weight, as if the forest floor remembered their passage and screamed beneath them. Clara felt a presence close behind, soft footsteps that ceased when she froze, only to start again when she moved. Elias gripped her shoulder, we aren't alone. A low hiss drifted from the brambles, a voice in Elias's ear that sounded like Clara calling for help. He spun, lantern aloft, but saw only Clara's startled face. They hurried through moon-dappled gloom until the trees opened onto a clearing where phosphorescent fungi clung to half-buried stones. There, carved into an ancient slab, were words in an alien script, here dwells the Watcher. Clara shivered, recalling her journal's warnings of an ever-watchful presence. Elias scanned the treetops, rifle raised. A shape detached itself from the shadows, a gaunt figure with eyes like hollowed stars. It vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving behind only rustling leaves and the echo of Clara's stifled cry. At dawn they found the remains of an open-air observatory perched on a crag. Rusted brass instruments lay scattered, lenses broken, star charts stained with salt. Clara knelt to examine a tarnished sextant, its index arm jerked of its own accord, pointing toward the heart of the island. Elias climbed the cracked stone dais, peering through an eyepiece at a sky that refused to stay still. Stars drifted like shoals of fish across the bruised dawn. Then the ground trembled, and the heavens above flickered as if the sky itself was rewinding. Clara's voice faltered, "Time, it's bleeding." Elias turned, finding her framed by broken pillars, eyes wide at the horizon where the sun rose twice, then reversed. A bell toll reverberated through the air, though no bell stood within sight. From the dais's base, hungry shadows spilled forth, coiling around their ankles. Clara grabbed Elias's hand, and together they bolted toward the cliff's edge, away from the shifting sky, toward the promise of solid earth at the world's breaking edge. Their descent led them into a mist-laden bog, fetid water sucking at worn boots. Every step brought them deeper into mirrored reflections of themselves, Elias's proud stance faltering, Clara's determined gaze crumbled to despair. Around them, the haze whispered fragments, "Too late. You'll stay. Return." The air twisted with the stench of decaying leaves and old fear. Clara pressed Elias's arm, "We have to keep moving or we'll be swallowed." He nodded, voice thick. They inched across spongy mounds until Clara's torch illuminated a shallow pit where dozens of footprints circled like dancers in a mad ritual. Elias's rifle barked as something slithered beneath the surface, a pale hand breaking the water's glassy skin. The shot echoed like a death knell, the hand recoiled, and the bog stilled. Heart pounding, Clara scooped muddy water into a flask, determined to boil it for their journey. Elias, knelt beside her, scanned the gloom. "That wasn't human," he said. She met his gaze, the resolve in her green eyes burning. "Then we're hunting what's not human." Exhausted, they stumbled upon a terrace carved from black volcanic glass. At its center stood a low altar, its polished surface reflecting their gaunt faces. Clara stepped forward, drawn by the altar's magnetic glow, and peered into its sheen. Behind their reflections, pale shapes writhed, something mirrored their very souls. Elias raised his lamp, shadows recoiled, then surged back, filling the terrace like a living tide. Clara recognized runes etched around the edge, words of binding and release. She whispered, translating from her journal, "Break the mirror, free the soul." Elias hefted a fallen boulder, with a roar, he smashed the altar. Obsidian shards sprayed like fractured stars. A howl ripped through the air, as though the island itself screamed in pain. Clara fell to her knees, pressing trembling fingers over her heart, feeling something old stirring within her chest. Elias grabbed her hand, helping her up. "We're closer," he panted, "to the core of whatever this is." She nodded, lantern guttering, but her determination burned brighter than any flame. The path led them to a ruined chapel, walls draped in cobwebs, pews shattered, a lone bell tower leaning at a precarious angle. Inside, dozens of tiny bells hung on frayed ropes, their tongues missing. Elias climbed onto the pulpit, yanking at a rope that groaned to life. Though no clapper remained, each bell told a mournful note, and a chorus of ghostly voices answered in lament. Clara pressed her palms to the stone floor, feeling the vibration, a code, a pattern, bells tolling in a sequence that spelled out a message. She whispered letters as Elias rang, F. I. N. D. T. R. U. T. H. The final bell pealed, and the chapel's walls shimmered, revealing a hidden archway behind the altar. Elias helped Clara down into the narrowing corridor. As they passed, the bells fell silent, leaving only the sound of their boots on cold stone, an invitation and a warning in one. The archway opened onto a yawning chasm. A rickety rope bridge swayed across the void, planks missing, the drop shrouded in swirling fog. Elias tested the first board, it held. Clara crossed behind him, lamp held high. Midway, the rope groaned, a distant gust rattled the ropes as if something stirred below. Clara froze. She thought she heard 1,000 hands clapping in slow unison. Elias paused, rigid. "Keep moving," he urged, voice tight. They inched forward, the abyss yawning beneath them like a mouth. Halfway across, Clara's lamp flickered and died, plunging them into darkness. In absolute black, she felt Elias's breath caught in his throat. A single plank cracked. He kicked it free before it broke beneath them, the sound of its fall swallowed by the void. Clara relit the lamp with trembling fingers. They reached the far side without looking down, and collapsed against the cavern wall, mud and sweat coating their faces. Ahead lay a spiral stair hewn from living rock, descending into the island's black heart. At the bottom, they found a vaulted chamber lined with scorched shelves. Charred tomes lay scattered, their pages turned to ash at a touch. Clara knelt by a half-burned codex, brushing away soot to reveal lines of archaic script. Elias found a desk bearing a single intact volume bound in strange leather. He handed it to her. The cover bore a symbol she knew from her journal's earliest pages, the sigil of the Watcher. Clara's voice trembled as she read aloud, "He feeds on fear, bound by words unwritten, fragments of prophecy coalesced, only those who dared speak the island's true name could command it." Elias frowned. "We've never heard its name." She turned pages, finding a margin note, "Speak the unspoken at the heart." A chill washed over them as they realized the island required confession, an admission of its nature before they could leave. Clara closed the book, spine cracking. "We have to find the chamber," she said, voice steeled. Elias stood, offering her his hand. Together, they stepped into the corridor's gloom, guided by borrowed knowledge and an unspoken dread that now had a name. They entered a cavern whose walls pulsed with living crystal, veins of luminescent crimson throbbing like a giant's exposed jugular. In its center hovered a translucent orb, suspended by gnarled roots that sank into the floor. The orb's surface rippled, reflecting Elias and Clara's haunted faces. Above, the air hummed in harmony with the orb's heartbeat. Clara swallowed, recalling the prophecy, "Speak what you fear, that it may be undone." She stepped forward and whispered, "You are fear incarnate, bound to our souls." The orb flickered, its glow intensifying until the crystals fractured, sending shards skittering across the cavern like starlight. Elias joined her, "And we are the voice that names you." His words echoed, and the orb shattered in a silent explosion of light. A shockwave raced through the cavern, uprooting crystalline roots that fell away, revealing a yawning shaft leading upward. Clara and Elias clung together as stones rained around them, then fell through the core into starlit sky. They landed on the cliff's edge, gasping beneath a windswept sky streaked with dawn's first light. Behind them, the cavern entrance sealed itself in gleaming crystal. Clara checked her watch, its hands spun backward, then froze at the hour they first saw the isle. Elias looked at the horizon, the sun hung low, though hours should have passed. Time here no longer obeyed mortal rules. Clara realized they were untethered from every timeline the island had claimed. The choice lay before them: climb to their wrecked longboat and sail away into uncertain hours, or remain to restore the natural flow. Elias studied her face. "Do you want to go back?" Clara closed her eyes, memories of the grotto and the altar flooding her mind. She opened them, resolve shining, "We speak truth to reclaim what was taken." Elias nodded. Together, they returned toward the island's spine, ready to anchor time back to its course. They climbed the ridge to the sundial courtyard, its gnomon now casting a fragile shadow pointing west. Clara whispered the island's true name, an unutterable syllable gleaned from her journal's margins. The ground tremored, stones quivered, and the tower collapsed inward. From its ruins rose a shape, pale, elongated, eyes burning with ancient sorrow and rage. Elias stepped forward, voice unwavering, "We name you so you may know your end." The creature shrieked, a sound that cracked the dawn sky. Clara held Elias's hand, together they recited the name again. The ground beneath the Watcher split, swallowing it into darkness and silence. In the hush, birds called from distant trees, and the island exhaled its first natural breath in centuries. They found themselves on the beach at daybreak, Clara's compass finally still, Elias's rifle slung over his shoulder. The wreckage of the Meridian lay half buried, as if no time had passed. Clara looked at Elias, tears mingling with relief. He offered a tentative smile. In the distance, the tide washed smooth sands, erasing footprints and splintered shards. They boarded the longboat, the island's threat extinguished but its memory etched forever in their souls. As they dipped their oars, Clara whispered, "We carry the witness now." Elias nodded, and together they rowed toward a horizon unbound by fear or time.